Hello and welcome to this conversation. I'm Safia. I am a mindset and a confidence coach. I help professionals to carve a career path that helps them to feel really enlivened in their careers and that their careers feel empowering and impactful. I want to share with you a few thoughts about something that I think is quite rampant in our lives these days, and that is the phenomenon of burnout. Now, we may find ourselves bandying about the expression burnout from time to time, but I think very few of us actually understand what burnout is. And I think even fewer of us understand how to respond to it effectively. Before I share with you a few thoughts about what the classic signs of burnout are and how you can respond to it, I just want to, share with you some thoughts about burnout that make it a very difficult thing to recognize that we are experiencing. So the first is that everyone experiences burnout very, very differently. And there is no one thing that you experience that lets you know, okay, so now I'm experiencing burnout. Burnout is also something that doesn't happen very quickly. Burnout happens quite stealthily. And burnout happens because we are operating from a place where we are not plugged into ourselves. We are plugged into the people around us, the environment around us, the noise that we find ourselves in. And we are so plugged in externally that we lose sight of what is happening for us internally. And what is happening over a protracted period of time is that we lose sight of the clues and the cues that our body is offering us that we might be heading into crisis. And so when we don't catch those clues, when we don't catch those cues, when we don't respond to them and give ourselves what we need, we end up heading into a full-blown burnout crisis and we crash and we burn. So there are many things that happen on the path to crashing and burning. The question is just, are you plugged in enough to catch on that it is happening in the first place? So I said that there are no clear indicators, no one thing that indicates that you have burnout, but there are these three classic indicators. If you are experiencing these three classic indicators, chances are that you may need to create some space for yourself where you can sort things out and stave off a crisis. So the three classic indicators are exhaustion, increasing levels of cynicism, and declining levels of personal efficacy. The exhaustion that we experience when we're experiencing burnout is quite different to simply being tired. When we're tired, we rest. We either sleep, we take some time out, we have a break, and we feel restored, we feel energized, we feel replenished. The fascinating thing about burnout is that because we are so preoccupied and so worried and so stressed about these external things, and we feel quite powerless in relation to it, and we feel as though we have to do more in order to respond to it, what ends up happening is that we are unable to access the state of rest. So we can do the activities of rest, but we can't actually experience rest. So we can go to sleep and struggle to sleep. Or if we fall asleep, we wake up fatigued. We can go on holiday, we can take a break, we can take time out, but we emerge from it as fatigued as we went into it. And that's because we are experiencing not rest as a state. What we are doing is we are numbing ourselves out. And when we numb ourselves out, one of the byproducts is that we start disconnecting from ourselves. So the numbing ourselves out is a self-protection measure, which means that somewhere in our nervous system, somewhere in our subconscious mind, we are feeling as though we are under threat of something. Now, this is the magic of the stealthiness of burnout. It becomes such a pervasive part of how we're experiencing our life. We no longer perceive the threat as an actual threat. We think of it just as how life is. And because we think of it as just how life is, we don't register that we have power to change things. And so, as I mentioned earlier on, we're disconnected from ourselves. We become quite disassociated from ourselves and the environment around us. We do things from a place of compliance, not from a place of desire, not from a place of wanting to do it. We operate from compulsion, very often from addiction, and we are soothing ourselves by numbing out and not by accessing rest. Another phenomenon of burnout at the exhaustion level is that what we're experiencing very often is a vulnerability to illnesses and to pain. We find over time that we have more days where we are unwell than we are actually well, which just induces deeper levels of coping mechanisms, deeper levels of compulsions and self-soothing that is not useful to us. The next phenomenon of burnout that is driven by this exhaustion is a sense of cynicism. Cynicism is a sense of you're doing things because you feel it must just be done, but it's quite futile. You're quite pessimistic. You don't know what the point of it is. And, your point of departure is always that it's not going to work. It's not going to improve anything. And so you might do things, but you're doing things from a place of the disempowerment. So what also fuels your cynicism is the third classic indicator of burnout, which is loss of personal efficacy. Now, this loss of personal efficacy very often is nothing more than a perception. And this perception is fueled by the fact that you're exhausted and that you're cynical. And so you end up doing things and you're not feeling as though you're doing at an adequate level. One of the results of the cynicism is that you might be getting positive feedback, but you're not necessarily buying into the feedback. You're thinking that people are giving you lip service, or you're looking for a level of feedback and it's not coming back at you. And this impacts your personal efficacy because you're thinking that what you're doing is not good enough. And so either you're thinking what you're doing is not good enough and you end up over functioning and doing more and more and driving exhaustion up, or you're exhausted and what you're doing is riddled with mistakes and that just drives your cynicism even more. So it is a very sinister cycle that you find yourself in. And if you are experiencing these three phenomena, these indicators of burnout, chances are you're just going to drive yourself more and more and more tired and still until you interrupt the patterns of thinking that get you into this pattern of behavior and start creating new alternatives for yourself. So my question is, are you experiencing these three indicators, the exhaustion, the cynicism, the sense of futility, and this idea that what you're doing is not good enough? If you are, you might need to get yourself some support. Now, one of the things that is very, very true about burnout is that burnout is about the fact that you're not plugged into yourself, that you're not paying attention and responding to yourself, that you're so engaged in the agenda external to you. And typically, this is what's happening for us when we're spending a lot of time comparing ourselves to others. It's happening to us when we're engaged in perfectionistic thoughts, when we are engaged in people-pleasing and imposter syndrome thoughts and patterns. And so then we become very, very, very susceptible to burnout. Now, I want to share with you an approach that I've adopted to respond to burnout. And this approach is encapsulated in the acronym PEACE, because I think that when we have burnout, what we really need is a bit more peace and ease in our lives. So let me run through very, very quickly what this acronym stands for. So the P in peace stands for purpose. Each and every single one of us is always operating at purpose. But when we are operating at purpose from a compliance and external perspective, it is not rewarding for ourselves. Purpose is more often than not nothing more than a reflection of how plugged in you are with yourself. Purpose is less to do with what you're doing and the intention with which you are doing it. So what is the purpose that will help you experience more joy and more pleasure and more connection with yourself when you are doing the things that you do? You may not actually have to change your vocation, your job, or anything like that. You may just have to change the purpose with which you are doing it. This is a very big conversation, and I'm going to stop here. But there are many resources available online for you, both at my website and at others, where you can clarify what your purpose is. Make the time and make the space to explore this for yourself. The next letter in the word piece is E, and this E stands for energy. Each and every single one of us is depleting our energy all the time. Emotionally, mentally, physically, we're depleting our energy. But we have to have strategies to restore and to replenish our energy, mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually, and even socially. What are you doing and what can you do to restore your energy? Without it being something that is time consuming, what matters is not how much time you're spending on it. What matters is the significance and the intention and the purpose with which you are doing it. Then it is just very important that we must register that burnout is not happening to us only at a physical level. It's a whole person system. Burnout is the crisis that invites us back into our own humanity, into reconnecting and reestablishing energy with ourselves, intimacy with ourselves. And how we fuel ourselves is very, very connected with how we reestablish intimacy with ourselves. The next letter in the acronym piece is A, which stands for alignment. Are the things that you are doing and the purpose with which you are doing it aligned to your values, to your highest intentions, to the actual goals that you have? Do you have a clear sight of your goals? And are you prioritizing things that really matter to you? Or are the things that is external being prioritized? How can you prioritize the things that actually matter to you and come back into alignment with who you are at essence? These are deep conversations with yourself. And so again, we're talking about re-establishing connection and intimacy with yourself. So the next letter in the acronym is C, which stands for connection, which is very connected to the things I've shared with you thus far. But connection is also about the people that you connect with, the environments that you connect with. Are you setting yourself up to feel inspired? Are you setting yourself up to feel energized? Who are you connecting with? Are they dragging you down or are they lifting you up? To emerge from burnout, you have to start seeking the companionship of people who will inspire you and light you up. This can be people that you're meeting in person in the analog world or the digital world. It doesn't really matter. But what does matter is that you are able to meet your need for connection. Connection is the most fundamental need of every single human being that, if it is not met, will lead you into a world of feeling disconnection and dis-ease with yourself and others. The final letter in the acronym piece is evolution. Evolution is the opposite of stagnation. And very often what we're experiencing en route to burnout is a sense of stagnation. Very often the people that I encounter are evolving in one dimension only, and that's typically their professional dimension. But they're not necessarily evolving along with their innate curiosities, along with the innate talents and strengths. Do you know what your talents are? Do you know what your curiosities are? Do you know what your strengths are? And are you creating the space to evolve in these dimensions of yourself? Because if you're able to do these things, you're able to come to a place where you are feeling enlivened on an ongoing basis. So I've shared with you the 3 classic indicators of burnout, and I've shared with you my acronym piece as a response to burnout. My invitation to you is to start creating the time, the place, and the space for yourself to think through these things. If you are experiencing burnout, interrupt it as best as you can, because responding to burnout or surrendering to burnout is something that has quite a catastrophic impact on you over the long term. If you need assistance, there are doctors, therapists, and coaches, and of course myself, that you can engage with. The thing that I just really want to leave you with is you cannot not pay attention to the indicators of burnout. If you do not pay attention, the consequences are quite dire. And it doesn't only impact you, it impacts everyone around you. Thank you, and please let me know your thoughts. I'm very curious to continue this, or very interested to continue this conversation with you.